Good morning, my name's Julie and my maiden name was Reed, so I'm a born and bred local of this area and went to St Helens Area School, as it was called, in 1950 when I first started school, and I was there until 1959 when I graduated as a Year 9 student and went on to commercial college in Launceston to become a secretary or whatever was required of me with regards my skills in typing and shorthand and bookkeeping and all those parts of commerce. And from there I went on to Launceston Teachers College, and I've been a teacher for 34 years. Well, it was a very much a smaller school, but followed through the school with the same friends, and they were very important to you. Even today I meet regularly with 3 other girls from St Helens School and reminisce over many things that happened there in those days. I guess the most memorable thing would be the companionship of the friends, and yeah, the fact that we were always loved and cared for by the teachers, and there wasn't a lot of discipline in those days, not a lot of need for discipline, but yeah, I guess one sad memory would be that there were students there that couldn't achieve very much, and they were often punished, you know, not for getting the marks and the work done that was required of them, and it was sad to see that sort of thing happening. And of course the cane was prevalent too, so you know, when you got into Year 9, your classroom was right outside the headmaster's office where the cane was used, and that was a rather nasty noise to hear.
Was it ever applied on you, Julie?
But one of my best friends that was subjected to the cane, he had learning problems, and we all felt sorry for him, and we'd secretly try to help him as much as we could to keep him out of trouble. But he went on to become a millionaire, so he knew that what he wanted to do in life, and you know, I guess as a millionaire he really only needed to sign a cheque and make phone calls and all that sort of thing, so there'd be lots of other people that would be helping him along the way as well. There were less buildings for sure. There was certainly the lovely brick building that was the original building, or probably the second building. The first one in pictures looked as though it was just made out of wood, and then eventually the brick building was there, and there were 2 other classrooms joined together to the right of the brick building, and I remember the population started to grow and they needed another classroom, so that was added to the block of 2, and so the classes were quite large. Classroom number 1 was grade 1 and 2 with a teacher called Mrs. Council. Classroom 2 was where the grade 3 and 4s were with Mrs. Graham, and the grade 5 and 6 students were in the new room, or they moved into the new room in my day of being there. And in the brick building were the 2 classrooms for the senior students, so we had grade 7, 8 and 9 in that building. There was a grade 6B and 7, and then in the front room there was grade 8 and 9, so the principal actually taught grade 8 and 9, and so that was quite a number of students that were bonded together, you know, right in those latter years. But we'd all been moving through together over those years between 1950 and 1959. The brick building, I remember, also had another room that was used as the library, and I noticed in the readings in the 130th anniversary book that principal's wife of one of the earlier principals used to use the library area for preparing meals for the students. So we always knew that there'd been a fireplace and a stove in there, and there were often stories about how somebody got a hold of Mr. Lee's cane and put it in the oven one day and it flew out, of course, when the oven was opened later in the day. So that was quite a thing to remember. And of course the headmaster's office was right there, a weatherboard addition to that building, and that was the room where the headmaster had the one and only phone for the school, and of course the cane was kept behind the door. So in 1957, I think I recall that we all went on a bus to St Mary's, and the show train came. So that was a big excursion, and it went all around Tasmania wherever it could, and stopped, and in here all of the carriages were things about Tasmanian industry. And so it had been supported by people like the Ovaltine factory at Devonport in those days, the zinc works. I can remember coming home with a little piece of zinc that was the shape of Tasmania. You know, we came home with show bags. Yeah, Goliath Cement, those sort of people were there. Each one had a shed or had a what do we call them, a carriage of their own. And yeah, so we were encouraged to ask questions and get as much knowledge about Tasmania by visiting this show train. Yes, I don't have a lot of memories of the road because I was only five. I was in grade 5, so I guess I took in as much information at St Mary's and then slept on the bus coming back. I don't know, but there was another excursion after that happened in 1957. 3 classes, grades 7s, 8s, and 9s, went on a bus and a train to Hobart to the Worksworth physical education camp that was in Belrive. And that was 2 weeks of physical education, learning to swim, going on excursions to Tasman Peninsula over to the other side of the river on a ferry to visit different parts of Hobart. I can remember going to the Tatler Theatre, and perhaps today that's a word that a lot of students wouldn't even know about, that there were 2 Tatler theatres, one in Launceston and one in Hobart. And the idea was that you went in to the Tatler Theatre and the films were rolling, and you knew that when you went in, you needed to come back out at the end of an hour when the program, you know, came around the circuit or whatever ever happened. Yeah, so that was you know, interesting to be part of that. But the 130th anniversary book has got a really lovely write-up about Worksworth Camp, and that's been done by my true school friend Heather Knight, who I meet up with quite often. Her name was Heather Nichols, and we shared a lot of things together. Yeah, so the journey on the road was it was interesting that we had to leave early in the morning to go to St Mary's to catch the train. And at Kanara we had to change trains, so we had a long wait there, 2 or 3 hours, and played cricket or whatever on the school ground at Kanara, and finally got to Hobart at the end of the day. And the same coming back with the changeover and the stops, yeah, and going through the tunnel in the area of Colebrook. You know, the lights went out and you went through the tunnel. We had 2 headmasters while I was there. Mr Overton was there for the first couple of years that I was at school, and then Mr Callaway came. And prior to Mr Overton was Mr Lee, who I mentioned before. Yeah, they were very stern and ran a tight ship, and we all conformed to the strict rules that they set, and the staff were very, very supportive. They were people that was teachers that stayed for quite a few years. They lived in the town and they really were part of the community as well as prominent in our teaching in our lives. Started teaching. I went to Teachers College in 1961-62. So started teaching in 1963, and my first post was to Ulverston High School, and I majored in home economics with the teacher training, and then I moved back into Launceston to Brooks High School, so I had quite a long time there. I was actually a demonstration teacher for the students from the Launceston Teachers College home economics area that was based out at Brooks High School. And after that, I took a year off and we went with my husband, we went to Canada and taught a primary school class over there, so that was very interesting to... No, I suppose it was a gradual change. Well, thinking of Brooks High School, there was a grading of students there. There were about 5 E classes and the lowest one was E5. The most academic one was E1. And that happened in the next year, D, C and B. Yeah, so those students there tended to follow through in their ability groups. And it was while I was at Brooks High School that I really became concerned about the lower ability students and the pressure that was being put on them to conform or perform. And I can remember having a group of girls, as you did in home economics, because the boys went to woodwork, on a Friday afternoon for home management. And I thought, what do they need to do, on Friday afternoon? They weren't interested in writing down how to clean windows or how to iron a handkerchief, that sort of thing. And so I decided, well, I'd take a different approach, and we'd, as a group, it was only about 10 students, I suppose, we'd get to and make afternoon tea for the rest of the teachers in the home economics block. And they learned wonderful social skills from doing that, and they really appreciated being loved and cared for in that way. And when it came time for exams, there was a certain period in the term when there were exams, and those same students had to sit at a desk and either read the questions from the blackboard or from the sheet that they were given, and they'd have to sit there for anything up to an hour, to answer the questions, and they didn't want to do that. They weren't able to do a lot of that. So I thought about that, and there was only one day in the week when I stayed at school for lunch, because I lived in Tully Street, number 3 Tully Street. And in the morning we'd, walk to school, and during the winter you'd have to, sidestep the puddles that had ice on them, or you'd break them open with your feet to get your shoes wet. But when it came to lunchtime, I could take a shortcut through Thompson's paddock, where Thompson's court is now, and you could go through the old service station at the back of the hotel, and you'd finish up in Thompson's paddock, and you'd go around the side of the timber mill, where there's lots of houses built these days, and over the back fence and into my place. And Mum would have the hot dinner ready for us, so you'd smell the roast beef and the cabbage on the way, and then back to school. The house on the corner of Tully Street and my house, number 3, were houses that were actually moved from Lotta to those spots there. So that's two very significant homes, along with a few others around St Helens. In Quayle Street, there's a couple that have, been moved there.
Yeah.
No, I think it probably was put on some sort of a sled, a big wooden structure, and would have been brought down by horses. I don't know, but I don't think it would have been cut. I don't remember Mum and Dad ever talking about it being cut into pieces. Yes, it would have been the 4 rooms. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's right. And when I was young, there was a bathroom off the back door. But today it hasn't got any chimneys left in it. So my mum and dad took out one chimney and the next people took out another chimney. Oh yes, there was one day in the week when we did home arts or cooking, and that was the day when we cooked a meal, and some of the teachers even came and had dinner with us. On the odd occasion when I did stay on another day, I can remember students sitting outside on the grass on the lawns having their lunch, and there was often the smell of sardine sandwiches or jam sandwiches.
I don't think much has changed.
Not the variety that students would have today. Yeah. And there was a time when, because my mother had to go to hospital, we actually went back out to Priory to stay with the relatives, and we stayed with a great Aunt Mary, and she sent us off to school each day with lovely jam sandwiches and some meat sandwiches as well. And when we got home at the end of the day, she'd have an egg flip ready for us. An egg flip was raw egg and milk, the egg beaten and the milk added, and warmed up, and a little bit of nutmeg on the top. But then I can remember other students that had misbehaved or hadn't performed to the expectation of the teachers. They'd be kept in after school for anything up to an hour to finish their work or do some more work. There would have been the old flip with the ruler, get on and do what you have to do and stop, interfering with other people. But I don't remember any great dramas apart from, the use of the cane for severe misbehaviour, but also for students that hadn't performed to the expectation of their teachers. Sometimes at the end on a Friday when we had a weekly test, there'd be students lined up for a couple of cuts of the cane because they hadn't passed their weekly test. So that was pretty cruel. And you can imagine, that I felt really sorry for them. So you can imagine why, we, in my year group, we used to try and help each other and certainly help those that, weren't performing well, and we'd sort of pass a little note over and say, well, that's the answer. or in that brick building, it was possible to pass little notes through the partition wall between the two classrooms. So there were, different things the girls were expected to do to boys. So the boys did woodwork, as I said before, and the girls did home arts. But on a Friday afternoon, you're expected to be part of the team that went around the school to the school staff room, the headmaster's office, the library, and the dining room in the home arts area. And we had to do the cleaning. I just sweep the floor and polish the lino and do the dusting and do all that sort of thing. So, and the boys went off to do some gardening, or there were times when they as a group would go down to the pine plantation. That students of today wouldn't know that the school had a pine plantation. It's down near Ponderosa, or the new piece of road that comes into St Helens. on the left-hand side, and a lot of schools after the war did plant pine trees as an investment and part of their school program, and so they'd go off and do some weeding around cutting the scrub around the pines from time to time. And on the left-hand side there was always a big sweeping corner, and up on the left-hand side was the pine plantation. I don't remember what year they would have been cut down, but it's certainly gone now. It's up there. One particular teacher, Nellie Cole was her name. She was very influential. I really, learnt a lot from her, and she was one that really encouraged and was always interested in what you were doing. But I think going back further, having a great aunt who was a teacher, I aspired to be as good as her, and that's why I went on to Teachers College. There were times when the home arts students during winter had to prepare soup for all the students that stayed at school for lunch, especially the students from Pine Garner and Priory and Gould's Country. They really appreciate having a mug of soup, so they all had to have their own enamel mug, and we would go out at, I think they'd come to the back door of the home arts area and get their mug of soup and then go out and sit outside in the cold. Yeah, so grades 7, 8 and 9 all did home art, mainly vegetable soup, I think. It was always bones that were boiled up on Monday and a bit more veggie added each day, and enough to last the week. And of course we had our own vegetable garden as well, so that was maintained by a gardener with the help of the boys. Towards the area where the recreation ground used to be, what's over there now, the school's taken over about half of the recreation ground. Probably about to the back of the gymnasium. Yeah. So there was the garden, and then looking up towards Madeira Park, there was the big bike shed where all the bikes were kept. And then there was the wood shed where all the wood was kept, and the boys went on a Friday afternoon and cut sticks for the fireplaces in the classrooms. Yeah. So all the classrooms had open fires except for that new building or new room that was put on the end of the block of 2 classrooms. That one actually had bar heaters that were on down along the window side, and they were high enough to burn your legs. They were dangerous things. Or if you got there earlier, you to school, you got the job of lighting the fire. And someone had to make sure there were sticks there from the night before to start the fire. Yeah, there was always the Anzac Day Carnival, and we were all expected to go to the Anzac service in the morning, and then with the help of the returned servicemen, there was always this sports carnival in the afternoon. So there were two houses of students. There was the Treloggan House and the Argonaut House. So that was a smaller population of students, so that's why there were only 2 houses. I was part of Argonaut House. What were some other things? There was always the school fair that we were all expected to try and help raise money for the school. And there was always a stall of homemade sweets, lollies, that was organised by Mrs. Council. She was a grade 1 teacher. There was a peddler's parade where you were encouraged to have your own little tray and go around and sell things. The peddler's parade was just a voluntary thing. You didn't have to be a peddler, but you'd have a tray and a strap around your neck with your goodies on it, and you'd have cakes and things that your parents would help you make. Yeah, lollies and cakes and so on. Oh, well, all that discipline that I talked about before I died. I don't miss that, miss seeing that sort of thing happen. You know, students being disciplined for not achieving or being caned. It was really sad, I think. And it was really satisfying to have the opportunity to work in that special ed area and find ways of involving children in learning that they really felt comfortable in. For example, at the Wentworth Support School, I was virtually employed as a social skills teacher, and I worked mainly with the senior students that had learning disabilities, and we decided that we'd set up our own canteen, and we called it the lunchbox. So every day we would do the canteen for the whole school of, I think we had about 75 students at the special school. Prior to that, because we were on the same grounds as the Howrah Primary School, they had previously been accessing their canteen. But anyway, the opportunity came for me to work with the students to set up their own canteen as the lunchbox. And as a result of that, I was part of the, I pioneered the A courses that they could be qualified in what was it, bookkeeping, food preparation, safety and hygiene, I think was another one, and computer skills. Yes, it was the start of the computer. So we'd have an ordering system that we'd punch into the computer, and that would tell us how many pies were needed, or sandwiches and whatever. So that was a great achievement, you know, in special ed at that stage. I think St Giles in Launceston were doing something similar, but our school was well recognised for the school canteen that had all those learning parts to it, and the opportunity for students to be accredited with an A course.
Cool.
Because I only went to grade 9, we never did our algebra. We didn't do it. So I can answer that one simply. I've never done algebra and never used it. Oh, and poetry was another focus. We'd have a resident poetry teacher come in and stay at the school for a week, and we'd have poetry lessons. Yeah, I forgot to bring my poetry book with me. At the Wentworth Support School, I worked with 4 other special needs home economics teachers in Hobart, and we actually produced a special cookery book for students with disabilities, and it's called Step Into Cookery. And I've asked Louise Lefevre to have a look to see if the copy of the book's at the school, but she hasn't got back to me, so I don't think they've got one. But it was a ring binder of substantial paper that was used, a glossy paper, and the pictographs were all visible, printed with minimum literature as well, so that the students could actually do step 1, step 2, and produce some, scones, pancakes, apple pies, whatever, whole meal.